So let's kind of build this application here if you haven't already started. If you have, that's great. If not, we can do something similar to this one here so you can kind of know where to start. So basically all you have is, it's pretty simple. It's just a list of items in a list box, and then you just enter a number and we just search that list box. Okay, if you find that data in the list box, and then you would highlight that list box like I showed you earlier, and you can say items found. If it's not there, you just prompt a message saying it's not found, it's not on the list box. Okay, they ask you to use a sub procedure to read the input. So meaning you read the data from this input box here, and you pass that data to a variable using the by reference. And again, this is just to kind of forcing you to use these in your code so you know how to use them. But of course, if you were to rewrite this application, you don't have to. You just make a global variable and you'll be done with it. But I want you to use these methods so you can know how to use them. Okay, so this sub procedure uses a variable, accepts a variable by reference, and again, remember the sub procedure does not return values, but by the reference we can certainly change the value in the sub procedure, and then you can create a function to search the ID. Okay, so you would say read the data, and then you will pass a function to search in the list. You pass this ID to the function, and then it will return true or false whether or not is in the list. Okay, then once you get the result, and then you would pass that result to another procedure to highlight the list if it's there. If it's not, you just say it's not found. Okay, so you have three general procedures in here, and I ask you to use a loop, either a do loop or a for loop, to loop through the list to match those inside the function here. Okay, and then that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's build something similar to this one here. And again, I'm going to create a new project form. We'll just call this, what is this, unit 8 or 8 or 9, doesn't matter. This is the assignment. Okay, or fish ID, what do you call it? Maybe we should call it fish ID, so I know. Alright. Again, your layout doesn't have to match exactly like mine. It's not really that critical. As long as you have a similar layout, it's okay. Again, the picture here, you can have fun with it. It's up to you. So I need the properties window, and I need my toolbox. Yeah, I'm not gonna put the pictures in. If you can if you want. You can just add the picture to the background in here if you want. But let's just go ahead and create this box here. So we will add a text box for the input. Okay, so somewhere here, enter the ID here, and we need a list box. So this list box we already pre-populated with some data, right? We'll put it, I just put it right here. Here's fine. So put the list box here, and I mean the text box here. The list box will be here. Will be pre-populated with some data, and then I have a button to find it. So we'll put a button here, and then we'll put I'll put a label here too. Just say enter ID, right? So let's go and configure our labels with the LBL. I'll just call it the key. Okay, this is the LBL key, and that will just say a message enter a key or ID or whatever you want to call it. Right here. We'll make this, and this text box will be the key. So txt key. The font, I'll also make it 20. I'll move over here a little bit, give you some room. Okay, and then the button will just basically btn, let's just call it find it, right? Font will be 20. The text should say, you find it, we can put search, you know, however you want to use it. Give it a color, the background color. And then my form, I want to center on the screen, so click on the form. Start position would be center screen. And we'll put the message down here. We'll say if it's not found, we can put it here, or you can put it into a dialog box. Message box is okay too, but we'll put that into the message box down here. And we'll just put in the label. Okay, so I'll put label down here. This will be the label for message. I could just copy from up here. Might have been quicker, but put 20, and then the message we'll just leave it. Just put a colon for so I know where that is going to be located. Okay. So here maybe let's just put like message would be like not found or found, or you know what? Maybe we'll put it down here about that. Let's put it down here. It will so we have more room to put a text message down here. And then the list box, need to make the font a little bit bigger, make it 20 also, and we will pre-populate this with some data. So you can click the drop down arrow here and click edit items and just put some numbers in there. ABC 1 2 3, okay. XYZ 3 2 1, GTC 3 4 5. Let's say you know, some A90, WI Wisconsin 567. Racine maybe 307. Just so we have that many ID in there. Okay. And it's not sorted. You could sort it if you want, but just so you keep it that way. So I have about 6 keys. And this list box will be just LST keys. Okay, the keys that we need to look for. Or it'll be a product key, product ID, and so on. And you can disable it, turn that to false, so you cannot select it, right? You cannot select it with the mouse. Okay, I'm going to save this and run just to make sure that that button is not, list box is not clickable. As you can see, I cannot select it. Okay, but we can still highlight it with the in the code. So if I enter a number like you know, like that, if I find it, if it doesn't match, we'll put a message saying ID AVD123 is not found. Okay, if it is, it would say found, key is found, and then we'll also highlight that in here. Okay, and we will force this to be uppercase, just to be safe. So I'm going to click here at the text box, and I think there's a uppercase somewhere here. You can find it, character casing right here. Change that to upper, so we force it to be all uppercase. Okay, so let's implement this. Again, the process is to enter a key number and then find it. If it, then we'll search the box, list box. If it's there, highlight it and put a message found. If it's not found, you should not highlight anything. Just say key ID something, it is not found. Okay, so double click to start. And so before we start this, we need to do what? Ask you to create a subroutine, right? So we create a subroutine to read the data. So initially in here, you'll be like read input, okay, and then we'll have the find the key, okay. This is the process part, and then finally display result, okay, output. This is read input. So we have a function, a method here, a subroutine call, function call, and then of course a subroutine call. So 3 of them. So the first thing is we need to read the input, and I ask you to pass the data over to the subroutine here as by reference, right? So what that means is you're going to create a variable in here in the local subroutine here, and we'll dim a local variable called key. This is the key we need to look for, and it's going to be just a string type, okay, because the data coming in as a string. So we're not reading that input yet. We're just going to pass this key to the subroutine to read it, and then once we read inside the key, and then we will going to assign the value back to the key here. So here is a subroutine. We'll call it read input. We're going to pass by reference, okay, a key. We call it the same name is fine. You can call it a different name, doesn't matter. I'll call it the same name. It has to match the data type as this one here is a string, so it would be of type string. And a subroutine does not return a data back, so we're not going to put a as data type here. And this is a really simple one, so of course you can usually do a little bit more, but for this example it's just really simple, just to illustrate how to use the parameter by reference. Okay, so if I change the key values in here, it's gonna affect this key over here when I call this method or this subroutine. So how do you read the key value to this key variable here? How do I read this from this box here? So you're just going to be basically saying the key is going to be coming from the txt key.text. Okay, just simple like that. And this one is just really simple. Okay, you read that from the list box. If you don't use the list box, if you want to read it from the a prompt window or a input box, you could also key that as well. Key is equal to the input box, and then say enter a key. Okay, and so once this key has been populated with the data, then the subroutine stops, ends. It does not return anything back, but because the key here is pointing to the same memory address by reference to this key here, then this key outside will also be updated. So the input part, we're going to call that subroutine call read input, and it needs to pass in the key. Okay, so this key goes in here. This key is passed to this placeholder, but this is referencing the same memory address as this one here, which is in a separate subroutine. Make the changes in here, and then when I end this subroutine, the data has been changed, but because they're linked together, then also the key outside here also be changed. Okay? If you don't put the by reference here, then it has no effect. Okay, so make sure you put that there. So read the input. Now we got the key, and then the next part is to process the key. So here I will have something like what is the function we call it? I'll say to search the key, right? So you can call it search, is fine. So you can do something like search key, and then here I'll also pass the key to that function. But then you want to return something, because the function will return back either is found or not found, right? So really, I would have another parameter up here. We would say found as Boolean type. Okay, that would be true or false. So the found will be set to that search key function, and this will be true or false, right? True or false. If it's true, then the key is found. If it's false, then the key is not found. And then down here, I'm gonna do the pseudocode here first before I put the code on there. And then finally, out here, we will call the result. We could just say display result. And we're going to pass the found to it, whether it's true or false. Okay. Also want to pass the key. If it's not the key, there's several ways to do this. Okay. You can pass the key, or you can pass, well, you need the key. And then if you want to highlight it, you can do inside the result, or you can pass the index. Actually, when you search the key here, you could also pass another index to track the index position. But for now, let's just select it. This is the big picture, right? You read the input, you search for the key. If it's found or not found, doesn't matter here. You pass that to the result. The result will check. If it's true, then the result is found. Otherwise, it's not found. So let's implement the search part. This is a function, right? So search key. I'm passing the key only. I'm not modifying the key at all, so I'm just going to use by value, which is the default, and I'm just going to receive the key. And I need to return this key back, or this function return a Boolean type. Okay, it needs to be either found or not found, right? And then down here it will return something. So I could have in here a local variable, leave some spaces. I could dim another local variable called found as Boolean. So initially, at the very bottom, I'm going to return found. So either true or false. So it needs to satisfy this function return type. And then true or false will be assigned to this one out here. Okay? So I got the key. So now this is where I need to search through the list here. How many items I know? Well, I can tell here I have 6, but if you don't know, you need to find the total items here, right? So you could do another like here, for example, again, max, if you want to call it max or max count, it doesn't matter, as integer, and this will be assigned the lst keys dot items dot count. Okay, that is the number of elements in that key. And of course, you don't have to do this, but you could also do like index, or maybe like you know what, well, we'll skip that part. I was going to say you can call it index instead of max. You call it max index, it would be fine, right? If your max index would be this one here, and then -1, right? Just showing you that way. You can do this way. You can call it here max index, right? If you do this way, then you know that the maximum index is already obtained. Okay, so either way you do it. So I will leave it back to max, and just show you that there are many ways to do this part. So we know the max number of items, and then now we need to search that list from 0 to max -1 and compare the key with each key in the list here. If we found it, then we're just gonna exit out. So we'll assume that the keys here are not duplicated. If it is duplicated, we'll just find the first occurrence and we'll stop there. Okay, you can force a loop to stop by issuing the command exit, right? Exit loop or exit do, and it will stop. So let's do our loop. We know that we're going to I use a do while the index. Okay, so index, I don't have it here yet, so I need to say another I call the index here as integer starting from 0, right? 0 to the max -1. That's why I wanted to call max index and then you -1 here, but this is fine. So while index is less than so if you don't want to do the -1, you can just say index less than max. This is not inclusive, so you're good. If you put inclusive, then you have to -1 here. Okay? So that is the difference between using the less than equal sign, or if you don't put that there, then max is good, because now we're not including the 10th item, for example. If you have 6 items, max is 6, then we're going from 0 to 5 only. So we're good. Okay? So we need to check the key, assuming that if key is whatever it is, match that with every item here. That's you. So we need to check if the key is equal to the LST keys dot items of index, the current index. If that is true, okay. So initially here, the found is already automatically set to false. Okay, you could also explicitly say this is false. We started with false. It's not found. You don't have to, but it'll already be false by the program. If it's found, if matches, then we found the key, and so we have to update this to true. Okay, we change that to true now. And then we can stop searching. Let's just say we search and it happens to be the first item on that list. If we found it, you don't need to search further, right? If it's not, we'll just move to the next index until we find it, and we'll again stop there. Or the worst case could be the last item on that list, right? Or it could be in the middle somewhere. So once we found it, we can actually force the loop to stop, and you have two options here. One is you can just say exit do. You force that to stop there, it will exit out, and then the found will be set to true already, and we're done, and then we'll just continue on down the list here, and then we'll just return found, which is already true. Okay, if this is not matched at all, if none is found, it will always be false. The entire list is not in there, then we'll return found, which is always false. Okay, this is one way to exit the loop. Another way is you want to add the found here to your index, to your condition here, right? So you could say if index is less than 1, if this is true, right, and found is false. Okay, if you do that, then you don't need to do the exit part, right? This is and, that means both have to be true. So index could be 1 and max is 5, but since the first or second item is found and therefore found is true, when you come back and you test it, this is no longer true. So therefore the whole thing is false, then you exit out. Okay, do you see that? That's another way. You could say if found is false. Or you can say if found is not equal to true, right? You can reverse these in any way you like, and it will cause this loop to stop when one of these is true. When found is true, or you max out your index and then you exit out. Or you can just force doing a hard, or it's called a premature exit of the loop this way. Okay, so I can keep it like this, and it should work. If it's not, we'll figure out why. So once we found the key, then we returned found back either true or false. Then we're done with this, right? We go back here, and then now found is either true or false. And then now we pass this found in the key to this subroutine to display the result. Are there any questions on this search key part? Okay. So let's code this display result. This will be a sub, right? So not returning date, not returning anything. So I need the found, which is a Boolean. So I will call the same name. Also need the key as integer, as string. Okay. So now I need to test the found if it's true or not true. If it's true, then, or not true, whatever it is. If it's true, then I want to say the message here, key, whatever that key is, found. If it's not true, then key is not found. So we want to take that message first. That's the easier part, maybe, right? So I can say if found is true, then else. If it's not true, then I have the else part, right? The easier part will be the not found. If it's not found, then we could just say LBL message. That text would be just say the key, and then what key is it? Well, it's the key called the key, right? Concatenate that is not found. Okay. And we could do the same thing with the found part. Put it here. The key is found. Okay. We'll just do that first for now, and then we'll do the highlight part in a separate after we check this works or not. And then we're done. Okay, so let's see if this works. Run, and we'll enter something. We'll enter just some arbitrary key. Okay. You can also force it to be 6 character if you want. You can also limit force that to be that many. If it's not, you can always say it's not enough characters, right? Let's say I enter that. I type find it, and didn't do anything. So what happens? I think it froze, right? It caused a loop. What could this be?
In the search part, we only have the one if it's the first index, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then how would we implement it if it's like the third or fourth?
Excellent. Yes, that's what the loop is, right? It stops there. So it just means you can't close that. So back in the search part, right? The index never get incremented. So it's always at 0, and it's always less than max, and found is always not true, and so that part always runs, and it will run forever, so we have the infinite loop. Very good catch. So this is the tricky part about the while loop. So now we need to either find it or not find it after that loop. We need to, the if block, need to always increment the index by 1. Okay? So if you don't do that, then this is the step part for the for loop. Okay, you can also do this. You can also accomplish this with the for loop. Again, for loop will go from 0 to the max. You can also force the exit out of the for loop if it's found. Okay, so we fix that now, and then we run it again. Okay, enter some code. It doesn't matter what case I use. It should be all case, uppercase. Click find it, and then we have the key FTG345 is not found. So it works fine. And let's just say if I put ABC123 there, ABC123, and the key ABC123 is found. Okay, so looking good. Let's try the WIS567. It's also found. So there you go. And the last part is how do we highlight it? So once it's found, they want to highlight this row here, saying here's the key. Okay. So to do that, we need to track the index position, right? We need to know what index is it. If it's not, we can also use the other method by calling the actual key. So you have those two options. So I'll do using the key first because that's the easier part. And the other one is we'll pass the index number. So since we know the key is found, then we just select the key inside here, highlight that with the exact key matching that data, right? So far so good. So now let's go in here, back to our result. If the key is found, if that is true, we put the message out there, and then we can highlight that list box. So it'll be like LST key dot selected item. Okay, this is the item name. If you know the item name will be equal to the key. That's all. If you do that, it will select the key based on that key value. It has to match the data. I think that's it for that one, right? It's very short. And then now if you run it again, and if you put in, whatever, not there, put in USA 890, and there it is. Okay? Very simple. And it can, just to make sure it works, RAC 307, and there it is. So this is by using the key, the actual value. So in this case, it's easy because you pass the key here. If you don't pass the key, if you can use the selected index, then you need to know the index position. And to do that, you have to go through the whole search again. You have to search for the key again, and then once you find it, you need to record this index. Okay, this is the other option here. Record the index, and then also return the index back to what it is. So you can have another function to find the index, which may or may not be efficient. Since you already do it once here, why not just pass the index back at the same time? Okay, I found the key, and the key is at the index, at the current index number, whatever that is. I return found, but then I can also pass the index back. How do you do that? Well, it says function only pass one parameter, one value. How do I pass the index back? Okay, so I mean there are lots of ways. One way is you can use a global variable like out here, right? You could say you know, you can use like dim what index position, something like that, as integer. Okay, so this is a global variable. And if you do that, then down here in your code, when you find it, found is true, you can also set the index position to this current index, whatever that index is. If it's 2, it'll be 2, 3 over 3, right? Okay, it's a global position, then you're returning the found, but then this is also in the global space. That means it can be accessed anywhere in your code. So now inside here, instead of using this method, you could use lstkeys.selected index. Okay, selected index here equals this index position. Okay, so that's another way if you use the global variable. So let's see if that still works. Let's run, and something is not found, but type in width 567, and there it is. Okay, so for 10x y z 321, you go by the index position. But just remember that if you use a global variable, then that global will exist throughout the entire program. If you have a lot of them, they consume a lot of memory. But that's one way. What's another way? If you're not allowed to use a global index here, you can move this into the local here. Okay, go into the local position, because now local, it won't work down here anymore, right? It doesn't work. So we need to do it this way. So down here in the search key, we need to return the position back, but this function will return a Boolean type, so we need to pass that as a parameter. Okay. Here actually the key should be as a string, and then the second parameter will be this position here. So I could put that here as integer, it's an index, but we're passing that again by reference, right? Same thing what we did with the input, the read input. So now I modify index position here to that current index, and then even though I return back found for the function, this is also returned back because of the reference. Okay, it points to the same position as up here when I call the search key. Now I need to pass the key and the index position to that function. Okay, this function returns true or false for this found. The key is not impacted, but the index position has now been changed to whatever that position is. And then I need to pass this index position also to this result, right? So I need to pass that in there, which means I need to also add a third parameter here to match that. So index position as integer, and now it goes in here as integer, and then that goes in here back to this same place, and I get the same. It should work as before. So this is how you pass the index to the function, and then back out to other parameters, and so without using a global parameter or global variable. So I can run this, and it should still work just like before. Okay, not found, ABC 123, and there it is, USA 890. Okay. So there are different ways to do it, and one you can see that one is more efficient than the other. So which one was the most efficient one out of those three? Probably the first one, right? Yeah, the first one, because we know the key already. We can match the key directly with the key in the here, and all we did was just, we didn't have to do all this stuff here. We just used that, and that solves our problem. Okay, so for example, if I comment this out, right? So even though I put it here, I'm not using this at all. I'm just using the key, actual key, to compare and match the key inside the list box, and that's why it works very nicely. Okay, and just use one line of code, whereas if I use the index position, I have to either define it globally, or if it's a local here, then I have to pass it around to use it. And sometimes you have to do this way, because for whatever reason, because maybe you're not allowed to put in a global space, or you have to or if it's in a global space, maybe this variable is in a separate form. Okay, you cannot access it, or maybe this variable is set to private. And again, this is based on the object-oriented approach, but you can set data to private, so that if it's private, you cannot access it. So when you have that issue, you have to pass to a function to use it. Okay, but in this example, the easiest way is to just use the key, select the item, and then set that to true. Select the key. Okay, so any questions how we did all this? Does it make sense? Can you do it now without looking at the code? So the idea is just to tackle one piece of it at a time. Okay, you look at any problem, and you have to figure out, okay, what is the first thing that I need to do, right? The first thing is, what happened here when you see this form? What should happen? And if you look at this, okay, so you have, the first thing is you need to read the key. Okay, that's all. Read the first key. Do one piece at a time. You don't have to do the whole thing like I did here at once. Just read the key and see if it works. You just say, display the key out here. Okay, good. I can read the key. So now, and then try to search the key into the list box. So you have to kind of know the steps. One is to read the key. Next is, once I know the key, now what? How do I search this box? Okay, so I have to search this box by using the key, compare with every item in the list, right? That's the process. So how do you compare that? Okay, I need to know the first item and the second item, and compare that, and if it matches or it doesn't match, and they keep going down the list until the end of the list, whether it's found or not. Okay, and then of course, how do you get the data from the list? Is, again, you have to know the list box and how to get the data. Okay, and so that's how you would solve this problem. And of course, if yeah, so if you watch this video again, if you just work it out, this is, I already pretty much gave out the answer for this assignment. Okay. Okay, next week when we learn arrays, okay, you'll be doing something kind of similar to the list box. Just so you know, list box is a special, kind of special array. It's called a list. It's a collection of data. It's a special type of data called a collection. And as you see that we loop through the list box using the index number, right? Index position from 0, 2, 3 to n. And then when we do array next time, it will be very similar to list box. Okay, array is a array, and also this list box here is a special type of data structure. And data structure, you hear the term also later on, you'll hear that again, is how data are being stored in the program. There are many ways to store data, and the list box is one way, the combo box is another way, database is another way, and array is also another way. There are many ways to do that. You also, in object-oriented programming, is another way. You store data using objects. Okay, so array is one of the most common types of data structures that you will encounter in almost in every language. Okay, and of course you have other as well, linked lists, and you have list, and you have array list, and there are many others. Hash keys and hash tables, the list go on and on. Okay, so I will stop here and then